Refracture is a debut full-length album from Aberration, a Minneapolis, Minnesota-based band that features members of Void Rot, Nothingness, and Suffering Hour. And so, of course, it would make sense if you were really excited about this one, because you're probably a fan of, dark and doomed death metal, abstract death metal, and maybe even blackened death metal. And the expectation is that this would be sort of a chaotic, dissonant black death metal record. And really it is, but we could qualify that as bestial death metal. We could say that there's a bit of kind of a slapping, aggressive, almost war metallic movement to this sound, and in a way it's sort of like you took early, like Portal's Utra era, but then gave it a little bit of like a Beharit-like touch to some of the drumming and the movement of it. There's sort of a bluntness to it. There's also this really interesting rhythmic finesse to it that keeps it feeling avant-garde and anxietous and unpleasant, but there's still a lot of aggressive, riff-driven life to the experience as well. So there's a lot going on. There's a lot of dynamic tension to this full listen that is pretty exciting. So we'll cut into a song here just to get a sense for where they're going to take us. So I'm not going to make it a huge point, but in the press materials they describe refraction, whereas refracture is the re-breaking of bones, either by accident or on purpose, and refraction is inequality of light as it passes through objects. I know that's just, I'm not trying to be like a know-it-all or anything like that, but it's an important thing that those are not interchangeable definitions or spellings. So I wasn't sure if this was, the theme became confusing at that point because it was described one way, but the word meant something else. Maybe it's, that doesn't really matter, but theme of this record and the band in general seems to be the surrealistic division of the self away from the light and into darker forms. And so it's the creation of abominations, it's aberration. There seems to be a theme there that makes sense. Otherwise, again, if you're a fan of Portal and Impetuous Ritual, you're going to understand what this band is doing right away. There's a lot of these driving bestial death metal or war metal style drumming on this record. You'll find the rhythms are sort of bashed out as well as swerving in movement. So this is very much an invention of Portal in the 2000s, and not that different from what that band was doing back then in terms of the way that they strung together anxietous and nauseating grooves into something that was sort of horrified. It was a horror death metal idea. And so the way that I see this band is sort of a version of that, and one that leans into more of the aggressive, bestial death metal side of things. So they're a little bit more militaristic with some of their beats. They're a little bit more exaggerative in some of their movement. Beyond that point, the experience here is unpleasant. And I would say, I think that my main note that I took on this record was that this is one of the more listenable versions of that sound, as people have taken influence from it over time. If we consider the brutal side of Mitochondrion at their peak, or if we consider, again, Portal at the way they've evolved over time to be even more experimental with tone and texture, here we find a very straightforward but long form version of that gives the mind a bit of time to breathe and accept these sometimes linear and non-repetitive motions as they swerve from place to place. So it does feel like we're going from point A to point B to point Z in a very slow and deliberate fashion, and it's always an interesting thread to follow. So there's a bit of mania to it. There's a bit of a sickness to the feeling of the experience, but it isn't so terrible and anxietous that I wouldn't want to return to it. I think that's kind of the main effect there. And it does sound like death metal. There are riffs. It is very driving stuff. but they do keep it atmospheric as well. The balance is pretty smart for a first record, and they've done well to keep it feeling emergent and interesting as an experience or an experiential listen. Not that much else to say about this. I think this is a record you just kind of sit with and you just let it freak out in front of you. I didn't find the lyrics all that interesting. The theme was unclear to me. I'm not sure how long this will last in my own rotation, but I do appreciate the qualities of it, and I do think it offers well above average immersive value. I think there is a lot of substance to what this is, and I think the art direction is pretty strong overall. So that's a moderately high recommendation for me. I think if you are just a huge fan of bands like Portal, you'll understand what this is right away. Of course, if you're a fan of Nothingness and Void Rot and Suffocating Hour, you'll go link into what this is pretty quickly and appreciate their take on it. So check it out. This released about a week ago, and you can read my review for more information.